Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Oklahoma Venture Forum podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Golding. I'm joined today by special guest, Barry Day, the founder and managing director of the Oklahoma Clean Technology Association. Barry is going to be our presenter November 8th here in Oklahoma City for the Oklahoma Venture Forum. We were in Tulsa in October. We're back in Oklahoma City in November at the Spring Lake campus of Metro Tech. We're going to be talking about clean technology. So, Barry, introduce yourself, introduce the Oklahoma Clean Technology Association, and let's have a discussion about the type of things we'll be hearing in the room on November 8th.
Perfect. Thanks, Kyle. So as you mentioned, I'm the founder of the Oklahoma Clean Technology Association. This comes from me having 12 years investing experience as in venture capital, corporate VC, private equity, along those lines. And 11 of those years, I was focused on my primary vertical of clean technology, deep tech, as opposed to smaller solar panels and wind farms, things like that. And I moved here 2 years ago from New York City. And I took the first year to go around talking to people and find out as much as I could about the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I found that despite the governor having listed this as one of his four economic development systems that he was looking for, there wasn't a whole lot of effort being put into the clean technology. So, of course, I had to figure out why. And I found out that most people don't really know what clean technology was. Right. And so and I wanted to share with them that clean technology is so much more than just energy. It's so much more than just, wind and solar or even, nuclear, the other things. There's a tremendous number of fields, and clean technology actually touches on almost every single aspect, every single industry and vertical. And so clean tech investors have a very unique position where they cover multiple verticals, being, manufacturing to AI, SaaS-based programs, all the way down to, shipping and logistics. So all of those things combined, I decided to found the Oklahoma Clean Technology Association because, one, my first goal was to make sure that people know what clean technology is.
Sure.
And so that they can think about it. And then two, to help foster the growth of entrepreneurship in here. Because again, clean tech tends to generally go hand in hand with investors and venture capital.
Right.
So it's the deep tech entrepreneurship.
So what's a definition of clean tech for someone who is still thinking like, I'm not exactly sure what that means?
Okay, so sure. So the easiest definition and the simplest is any technology that is environmentally friendly that is better than what we currently have.
Okay, so an improvement.
Yes.
Okay.
And so that could be blue tech or green tech. Green tech is completely clean. There's no environmental harm, pollutants, or even carbon dioxide emissions. And then you have blue tech, which is the better than what we've got. And they generally look at that as a transition technology.
That makes sense because you can't just go from what you have today to what you hope to have someday, especially when it comes to all the ideas around how you actually do it in a business sense. What's the cost and what's the technology needed, the research, et cetera, to get from point A to point B, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So the Oklahoma Clean Technology Association also has 8 pillars of clean tech. Let's talk about some of those pillars.
Sure. So what we did was we broke them up into finding ways that it can access every single aspect, every vertical among venture capital investing and other industries, how we look at it and how it's broken down. And so we looked at the easiest one, which of course is energy.
Sure.
And so there's a lot of those, but then there's also things like energy efficiency. Then there's also energy storage. Because believe it or not, as they say, the 3 R's, reduce, recycle, and reuse. Well, reduce is probably the first one that we have to take a look at. So reduce our consumption of energy and then go from there. But we also have things like ag tech. Agricultural technology is so deeply tied to the environment that you really cannot separate the two.
Sure.
And so it's always important to remember that, you have to keep things in mind like soil runoff or the loss of phosphorus. All of those things are part of agricultural technology, and we don't even think about that. And then, of course, chemistry is the big one that gets a lot of green and clean technology there.
Obviously, anyone who's been in Oklahoma more than 5 minutes understands the energy sector is very important to us. And so you're going to have immediate impact there. Ag is also right there with energy as being huge in Oklahoma as well. And I know there's a success story about chemical from emanating from Oklahoma right now, specifically what Sharina is doing with
absolutely
her rethinking plastics.
Yes, absolutely. I love Sharina Perry's story at Utopia Plastics. In fact, she actually was there to help us launch the Oklahoma Clean Technology Association at our first party on Earth Day this year. It's just amazing to think that not only does she not have a chemistry background,
right,
but she's also found a way to bootstrap so that they've not had to take any outside institutional money as of yet. They've done everything through partnerships and bootstrapping.
Right.
But yeah, it's a plant-based biopolymer, which is a plastic, and it biodegrades within the allotted time to consider itself biodegradable. We're looking at I forget how many days, but it's less than half of a year,
right,
where it starts to biodegrade. And so a lot of times you have these single-use plastics that sit in landfills for thousands of years before they're going to break down. And really, if they're in a landfill, it's anaerobic. There's no oxygen getting there. So they're not going to break
last
down at all.
forever.
Exactly. But this plastic actually breaks down, and it's perfect for single-use plastics. And they're going worldwide right now. So they're selling the resin to, plastic fork manufacturers and things like that. And then they'll put their name on it. And meanwhile, Utopia Plastics is, making a huge profit from doing that. And they're still growing.
So a huge player in clean tech right here in Oklahoma.
Yes.
Outside of energy and ag.
Yes.
Now, there's also things like water, waste, and landfill technology, et cetera, batteries, all kinds of things like that come along with being the pillars of clean tech.
Yeah. Water is the most underrated, and from a lot of these climate and clean technology conferences I've been going to, most of the technical experts and the investors have all been saying the same thing for the last year or two, that water is going to be the next most important technology. And I think about the water quality here in Oklahoma City.
Right.
It's acceptable, but it's not great. And, some of my family members have actually gotten kidney stones from drinking the water. So now we're forced to buy plastic bottles of water from Sam's Club or BJ's or Costco. And then, of course, that contributes more to the plastic problem because we're using more than what we need. But our immediate health is the most important thing, so we can't take that for granted. And that's why we have to look at that. So water is going to be the next big thing. And there's a tremendous number of technologies out there that, from desalinization to simply collecting water from the atmosphere, that's going to be really beneficial, and particularly here in Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. Where I came from in the Northeast, it was no big deal. If we had plenty of water. We could waste as much as we wanted. But down here, you can't do that.
Right.
If you drain Lake Arcadia, people are going to be very upset.
Right. Yeah. So when we talk about energy efficiency, we talk about agriculture, we talk about water, obviously, no pun intended, trickle-down effect.
Right.
Everything is affected by it. So the homes we live in, the businesses that we operate in, our commercial buildings, our automobiles, our streets, our public life are affected by those things on a regular basis. So not just at the top of the clean technology chain, but everywhere along through there's benefits to human beings and to the planet of embracing clean tech.
Indeed. And a lot of these clean technologies, if it's not just for your own personal health, because we have issues with microplastics, we have issues with smog and pollution, things that are going to directly affect you, including, a lot of people have allergies around here, but I believe that it's not necessarily allergies to the pollen per se, as it is exposure to the pollution and lung damage.
Right.
I've seen pictures of Tulsa where the entire city downtown is just covered in smog and you can barely see it. Those things affect us locally. So, and you think of the Dust Bowl from the 1930s.
Certainly.
Everybody plowed up the land. That was a man-made climate disaster. everybody plowed the land to create farms, but they didn't realize that all that land was packed down. And with it being as windy as it is here in Oklahoma, that grass was holding everything in place. Now that the land was plowed, loose soil was on top, and the wind started blowing, and thousands of people died from asthma and asthma-related deaths.
So the wind and that hard-bred clay, the soil that we have here, was a problem in the Dust Bowl. And now we're capturing wind and we're utilizing it to generating energy.
Yeah.
So when we talk about investing, when we talk about venture capital backing, what are the opportunities now in the immediate future, and you think and on into the future, even 5 or 10 years from now, for investors to be considering clean tech as something that they want to get involved in?
Sure. So the most important thing to know is that there was this long history of clean tech investing, started with John Doerr from Kleiner Perkins. And if you haven't heard the story, it is just an amazing story. Where they were watching that Al Gore movie right after it won an Oscar.
Inconvenient Truth.
Yes, that's it. And his daughter came up to him and said, "Daddy, your generation ruined the planet for us. What are you going to do to fix it?"
Okay.
And he was in tears, and he decided that he was going to create a fund just to invest in clean energy or clean technologies. And so that was the first official fund. There were other investors in there, but this one was the first one dedicated specifically to clean tech. And that was back in the early 2000s. And clean tech has failed at that point. Right around 2011, which is shortly around the time I got involved in clean technology, a year after clean tech failed. But I mean, you were talking about hundreds of millions of dollars going into clean technologies. And so I was there when it was small, when the volunteer organizations that I was helping with barely had companies, they barely had volunteers, and they were struggling. And then I've watched it grow and get better. So a lot of people have learned. The scientists, the inventors, the entrepreneurs, they started realizing that it's more important to learn from your mistakes and make your technology profitable. People aren't going to invest in your company just because they like what you're doing or you're going to save the planet. You still have to be profitable. You still have to make money.
You still got to have an ROI, right?
Yes. And now Clean Tech 2.0 is upon us. It started about 3 years ago. And now you have these experienced personnel that are coming and learning, they've learned from their past mistakes, and now they're coming out with newer technologies that are going to be profitable. And the inventors don't think about this. The PhDs, they don't think about starting a company until they know that they can make money from it. So it's a lot better. And the VCs on our side, we realized that it was important to reach out to scientists, not just MBAs, to do our due diligence and learn about that. So now the technical side, it's, everybody's had to up their game with clean tech, especially because clean tech has traditionally been one of the least profitable sectors in all of the venture capital community. That's changing, I believe.
So you saw the opportunity to help move this along, and one of the ways to do it was putting together the Clean Tech Coalition and bringing people together, getting them talking, getting them learning from each other, organizing, etc., inspiring entrepreneurs, investors, maybe even students and their career tracks. So how's that going?
It's going great. So I started out just throwing, for lack of a better term, just throwing parties, having monthly meetings. And I found that every month we'd get all new people, but I wasn't getting a whole lot of people coming back. So we're kind of shifting gears. We're going to do speaker series. We're probably going to be doing change our monthly meetings to quarterly meetings, just so people don't get bored. They have, and they have new topics to gather from.
Right.
But I am reaching out to at least one university. I've got a couple more that I'm looking at because one of the most important things that for me is that we have to reach the college students, because you can have an engineer that's been doing, working in the field for the last 20 years, and he can find a better way to do this. He's invented a better mousetrap, or, she's thinking, a more profitable way, and that's good. But those are incremental improvements. What we really need are transformational improvements. And so that comes at the university level most of the time, because they're working on the most cutting edge, the bleeding edge of technology. And a lot of PhD students, they don't know necessarily what their PhD thesis should be. Well, come to our clean tech events and hopefully we can help you get some ideas.
Right. And along the way, as we transition from traditional types of building and construction and energy into new, cleaner ways, there's what you mentioned, blue technology,
Yes.
on the way to green technology, right? So
Yes.
there's opportunities along the way for people to create a better mousetrap or create a company that has impact, and then others can invest in it, and there's a business ROI that comes along with it as well.
Yes.
So all of this, obviously, you kind of, talked earlier about like Oklahomans talk about it, but then, maybe they say, well, we got to protect oil, we got to protect natural gas, we got to have those kind of traditional tendencies to kind of pull back from new ideas in those spaces because they're so important to our sector. So how are you telling those people, educating those people, informing those people that we can do both? That we can have all of that industry and do it better and make these incremental steps and have green options and blue options, et cetera.
I love that you asked that question, Kyle. Thank you so much. Ironically, when I was in New York City, a deep blue state, I was actually working for an oil company doing clean tech investments. It's called SK Innovation, Korean oil and chemical company, $320 billion company at the time. And I met people from BP. I found out BP was actually the largest investor in clean technology in the world. It's single investor. Mm-hmm. And of course, we have David Klaus came from BP. He's up at EIC Rose Rock. And, so he's a clean tech expert and knows his stuff. And so we've really got a tremendous number of people from the oil and gas fields and industry that really understand clean technology because the oil companies are investing in there. And when I was in New York City, I had people, when I approached them and said, "Oh, I'm interested in your technology. Can you tell me more?" They said, "Oh, you're working for the oil company? I can't talk to you. You're the enemy."
Oh yeah, right. And adversarial.
Yeah. But what was crazy, I expected moving to Oklahoma, deep red state, to have the opposite kind of pushback, like, "Oh, you're in clean technology." But what I found out is nobody's against saving the environment. Everybody wants to help. But what people were against was they don't want government mandates forcing you to buy a Tesla by 2030 or you get these massive fines or something ridiculous like that. They want the free market to be able to determine whether how these clean technology companies come about. Right. And people will vote, or they'll vote with their dollar using their conscience. And sometimes you just can't afford it. So, like the Cash for Clunkers program that President Obama created, his goal was to get these really nasty, polluting old cars out of circulation. But what we found out was the unintended consequences of this was that poor people often buy those old clunkers. Right. But if you're getting $2,000 from the government, no matter what, and these people can only afford $1,000 for their car, they go without vehicles. And sure, you've helped clean the environment, but you've also made a lot of people not be able to hold jobs and take care of their families because of that. So we have to do this in a common sense sort of way. Right. What's really important here is that I found that the oil companies, even around here, are heavily in favor of clean technology. Whether it's a greenwashing, sometimes it could be, but for the most part, I think these companies are very interested in the technologies. It's just right now, people don't know, they don't know how to think about clean tech just yet because of all the politics that are involved with it. And when you have people like Greta Thunberg screaming, "We're going to die in 5 years,"
right. It's hard to take that serious.
Yeah. And climate scientists they've changed their models now to say that we've got significantly more time than what we thought, which doesn't mean that it's a walk in the park before, climate change is going to be, cause Florida to be underwater or something like that. Right. But at the same time, we have to, realize that you can't just change everything overnight.
Right.
And so this is where the technology comes in. This is where invention comes in. And technology and the free market are going to save us, not the government.
That's typically the case. That's for sure. What is the biggest roadblock, whether it's in Oklahoma or in the United States or just the world right now, to clean tech being more impactful and more important in our daily lives and on the investment opportunity? What's the biggest hurdle right now?
So the hardest, the biggest problem I've seen from the investor side is the lack of marketing. That these clean technology companies, they can't grow because they don't have the platform for people to hear what their new technologies are. And more importantly, I think, is the pushback from the capital expenditures. Because if I can install solar panels on my home, on my rooftop, wouldn't recommend it with all the hail around here unless you get something to protect it. You know? But if I want to install solar panels on my home and it costs $25,000 to do it, I can't afford to take out a second mortgage just to install solar panels, even if it's going to save me $40,000 over the life of the solar panels. So that's something that's really important. We have a lot of infrastructure that would have to be, just uprooted and changed and gotten rid of, which also isn't going to work. So what we really have to do in that case for the infrastructure is do it incrementally.
Right. Which is a common theme. We've had a little bit of a theme, right? It's not about taking everything we've done before and throwing it away, but it's about making incremental changes that are constantly improving, which also sounds very much like running a successful business.
Yes.
Well, that's it. Thank you for this conversation today. Interesting things that I didn't know or wasn't aware of, and I'm excited to hear what your presentation will be for in the room on November 8th for OVF members. Of course, we want you guys to show up and be in the room, but you can also join us via Zoom if you're from some of our friends in Tulsa or anywhere else in the state, or you just can't make it to the Spring Lake campus of Metro Tech on November 8th. But your best case scenario, come listen to Mary talk in person, see the slides, get the whole experience, meet the other members of OVF2, get in part of the Q&A and all of that good stuff. So hopefully you guys learned some interesting things about clean tech. Hopefully maybe we spurred on some questions that people can have for you on November 8th. And you guys go check out the website too for the Oklahoma Clean Technology Association. My guest today has been Barry Day, the founder and managing director, and will be our main presenter on November 8th, 2023 for the Oklahoma Venture Forum Luncheon. Thanks a lot, Barry.
Thanks, Kyle. And just as a quick shameless plug, we do have our meeting on November 15th from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Angry Scotsman. And our guest presenter is going to be Oliver Shavat from Siloon Labs.
Hey, so great local craft beer, clean tech, and a local startup that's doing some interesting stuff. I've seen what they're doing as well. So check that out as well. Thank you very much for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Kyle.